Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since I've done a live stream, but you know what? It's also been a while since I've had Troy Francis on my show. So it's always good to have you here, my friend.
Absolutely, sir. No, really good to catch up. And obviously, we were on Rule Zero just now, and it's good to, I mean, we're not really chatting for a while, so it's really good to see you and everything, man.
Yeah, and you've got the reason I had you on is you've got your new Cat Academy course about a game is closing in the next 48 hours, and I had my YouTube channel banned for the last week for some naughty words. So I'm like, all right, quick, get Troy on, get him in front of my audience, get these guys, some help with their inner game before it's too late.
Thank you very much. No, thanks for having me on, mate. It's awesome to be here.
And we've got everyone's always cracking some jokes in the chat. And I was in Englishman. First question: who's going to win the rugby? Obviously, the Australians.
Well, let's see.
Mate, I don't really keep up to. I don't really keep up with the rugby too much. Do you, Troy?
I'm not really a huge fan. I have friends who are. In fact, one of my friends I know is watching it at the moment. I'm not. Yeah. It is what it is. But there's lots. Obviously, I'm in London, but there are also many Australians here as well. So it's going to be an interesting atmosphere around here.
You can't get rid of us. You know what's funny is that this city. I live in Miami, Florida now. For those who aren't aware, is like the only place I've ever lived where there aren't Australians.
Really?
Like we're everywhere, but for some reason Australians aren't here in Miami yet. Like there's tons of Australians in LA, tons in like London, like everywhere else I've lived, but here
it's like the Irish, isn't it? Though I mean, you go anywhere and there's an Irish bar. Anywhere in the world, there's an Irish bar there.
I think that's got something to do with it. I think it's like part of our Irish heritage that would just encourage us to flee the motherland and reproduce everywhere else we go.
Absolutely.
But anyway, that's beside the point. The reason we got you on today, Troy, is to help guys with their inner game. And obviously, for those who aren't aware, who've maybe never been introduced to Troy before, Troy is a dating coach. Troy takes men out in the field, takes them out to bars, takes them out into the streets in the daytime, and teaches them how to chat up with pretty young ladies. And a big component of that skill set, there's obviously the outer game aspect, which is the logistical stuff, the technical stuff, like what do you say, how to stand, your body language, how to communicate effectively, your vocal tonality, your eye contact, these kind of things. And then there's the internal game, like what's going on up here in your head, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
As a guy who takes dudes out into the field on boot camps and coaches them in real time, one-on-one, what are some of the biggest, I guess, weaknesses in the average guy's mentality that kind of prevent him from getting the results he wants to get?
Well, really, it boils down to a lack of low self-esteem, or a lack of self-esteem, a lack of confidence in oneself as the product. I always say you are the product, and game, whatever that is the delivery mechanism, right? So the first thing is that, like Rich Cooper would say, you got to do the work. You got to ensure that the product is as good as it can possibly be, which means obviously money, muscles, game, all of the usual stuff that we talk about. But equally, you have to be able to deliver that to an audience as well. You have to be able to, first you need to be convinced of that yourself, and then you need to sell it to your target audience, if you like. Because if you're marketing a product, but secretly you think the product's a bit crap, then you're not really going to get that kind of traction that you would get if, as you should, you think the product is amazing. So you've got to think the product's amazing first, which means high self-esteem. You've got to re-engineer the way you think about yourself. And then you've got to emanate that when you go out and you meet women that you are attracted to.
And do most guys kind of come to your coaching or boot camps with this kind of mentality of the woman is the prize and putting women on a pedestal?
Yeah, it depends, because we get people who for people who don't know, I've been doing a load of live coaching this summer with James Tusk. We've been over in Russia. We've been in Ukraine. We've been in Poland. I was in Serbia recently, just all over the place, all over the shop in Europe and Eastern Europe. And we've been teaching a lot of different guys. And it varies, of course, because we get guys who come at this from different baselines. So some guys we get are very accomplished already. They're very high self-esteem. They're guys who maybe they've achieved a lot and they're well put together. And so for them, it's more a little bit of tweaking that's required. But yeah, there is a large number of guys who it's not even necessarily that they put the women on a pedestal so much, but they subtly think that the women are better than them. You know, they're certainly not going into the interaction thinking I am the prize, which is the thing that you're meant to. That gets ridiculed a little bit, but that's kind of what you're meant to think. You're meant to walk in and think, hey, I'm the prize here. I'm the big deal here. And these guys are certainly not thinking that.
And it's kind of this. It's a bit of a paradox because you're like you said, like you're the prize, but you're simultaneously selling yourself, right?
That is a very good point. Actually, that's a very subtle point. Well, I think selling is maybe perhaps not the best word to have used in a way. That's a kind of an analogy, but you're right. It does break down at that point. And I suppose what we teach when we talk about game, really these days, it's very simple. It's not really doing these crazy things. It's not learning these scripts. It's not having these amazing lines or anything like that. The game that myself and James were using when we were in Russia was to walk up to the girl and say, hey, you look like nice to, I just saw you look really cute. I had to come over and say hello. And she probably didn't speak English. So then we go, me, London, the Queen, Harry Potter, Sherlock Holmes. She goes, oh, London, yeah, that's so cool. And then you go, Instagram. And then you send her a message later on DM. That's the extent of the game, right? So the game bit is not, oh, well, you have to go through this 7-part process and it's all really complicated and blah, blah, blah. The game really is just walking up to her and introducing yourself. It's fairly straightforward. But within that, obviously, what's carried over when you introduce yourself, you go and say hello, is the way that you think of yourself, the way that you the vibe that you have about you. And if that vibe is flat or it's very low, then you're more likely to get rejected. Okay. So the inner game work really is the thing that's it's the ice under the iceberg, under the surface.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's like the Titanic iceberg analogy, right? This much of the iceberg pokes at the top, and then the rest is like sitting there under the water.
So in that sense, so you're right. The analogy of selling yourself breaks down a bit at that point, because what you're not doing is going up and saying, "Well, actually, I'm really good because look at my watch, and I bought, I've got this home in the south of France and stuff." You're not doing that at all. In fact, if anything, you're doing the opposite of that. You're not concealing those things if you are rich or you've got a lot of stuff going on, but you're not advertising it because you should embody that confidence already. And if I
was going to say you mentioned before, like the vibe that you give across in a conversation with a woman. Women will use that phrase all the time, like, "Oh, I like a guy who can vibe," or "We have a good vibe," and it's like, what the hell does vibe even mean? Well, this is actually like in a game is a better way of understanding like what vibe really is, because it's your internal belief affecting your subtle sub-communications in your body, because your like psychology and physiology are very much interconnected, right?
Yeah.
So if you are nervous, if you are lacking self-esteem and you're nervous, for example, well, that's going to come across in the way that you speak. Like your vocal tone is going to change. It's going to, you're not going to be loud and booming and projecting. If you're nervous and anxious, you're going to be, "Oh, hey, I'm up here from England. Where are you from?" Like, voice might be cracking. Your vocal tone is going to be low. You're going to be apprehensive to make strong eye contact, right? You might be fidgeting, touching your face, touching like hands in your pockets. All these, there's a million little things which like humans pick up on subconsciously, but women especially pick up on them immediately, which display your own like you said, your own internal assessment of your own value, like your own internal belief in, am I actually the prize? Do I actually have value here? Is this woman like, am I, for want of a better expression, like, is she better than me, or am I better than her? And I fundamentally believe that like women don't fuck down, women fuck up, right? So there's a kind of, if you understand that, well, then it kind of implies that if a woman sleeps with you, then by virtue of that, she has to think that you are better than her in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like that assumption has to be there. Whether or not she doesn't consciously say it, doesn't consciously think he's better than me, but there's something there that causes her to put you on a pedestal, to put your value above hers until you prove her otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always a value exchange, isn't there? And like you say, the person with the highest value to offer is going to be the person who wins out. So in a hierarchical group, it's going to be the guy at the top of that group who's going to get the most attention. It's going to be the Chad and the jock at high school or whatever it is, right? It kind of stands to reason. So yes, and like you say, I suppose it's a slightly uncomfortable truth that really you want her to perceive your value as being slightly higher than hers, if anything. But the way that you get that across, I believe that the way you get that across most effectively is socially and through the manner in which you act in a social space or a social setting. Because, and again, I always end up going back to these guys as an example, but obviously, Tristan and, Andrew Tate. Now, there's a couple of examples. So we met up with them recently when I was in Kiev in Ukraine, myself and a guy I was working with, and we met up. We went to where they were staying, or we went to a cigar bar near where they were staying, and we kind of met up with them. Now, they are guys who, yes, they've got all of the trappings of success and being a high value man and all of that kind of stuff. But they're not necessarily telling people about that. In fact, they're not telling people about that. They're not sort of sitting there going, "Oh, hey, well, just hang on a second. Look at my Instagram. Can you see that 250?" They're not doing that. But what they are doing is they are putting across this very polished, very accomplished, just that sense of gravitas. And women pick up on that. Now, I was in a different cigar bar with Tristan some time ago. Sometime in between the many lockdowns that we've had, and he got the phone number of the waitress in the cigar bar, and all he did, it was just through simple charm, just a little bit of back, nothing amazing, just a little bit of back and forth. And then he was like, "Oh, we should exchange contact details," and that was it. So, and she at that point didn't know, "Oh, this is Tristan Tate." He didn't say, "Oh, hang on a minute, just have a look at these Lambos on here." He wasn't like, "Oh, look at that car parked outside." Like, there was none of that. So the value that he was embodying must have been communicated in a different way. Now, it comes across in a variety of ways, doesn't it? Partly, he's a very well-dressed man, so there's that. We were also in a kind of upscale place, so I guess, in order to be there in the first place, you've probably got to be fairly affluent or whatever. And of course, he's decent looking and he's in good shape, but being in good shape is something that you control. So the point is that you need to be able to sit in a social environment, to inhabit a social space with the authority and the gravitas that is in itself going to communicate to her that you are high value without you having to say it, without you having to tell her, or without you having to show her your watch or something like that.
And there's, speaking of Andrew and Tristan, friends of mine, it's like there is an unwavering self-belief.
Yes.
There. Yeah. That underpins all of it, and it's up here.
Yes.
Not just those guys, but other friends of mine as well, like my friend Justin Waller. I would even say this about myself. It's like you have, like, for example, when just as an example of like an in-a-game like framework that I know I have, because people have talked about it before. A lot of guys will, maybe judge a girl for sleeping with him on the first night, for example.
Yeah.
Right? On the first date. Like, I do that all the time. And I never, and my framework for that is, and probably the reason that I do have like the same night lay so frequently, is because I fundamentally believe that any woman who sleeps with me on the first date is a genius, because she's able to see that she's got fucking lucky. She's able to see that she has a goddamn hero in front of her, and she's not dumb enough to let me get away. She's giving me the thing I want, and as she's being compliant and she's being polite and happy,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, cool. That makes me want to stick around and spend more time with you, rather than wasting my time, right? So, but the framework there is like, I fundamentally believe that any woman who sleeps with me is smart, because I'm obviously the best thing to come across her in her dating life ever.
Yeah.
Like, obviously. But that's the delusional self-confidence part.
Yeah. And well, I used to jokingly say I always lose respect a little bit for a woman who doesn't sleep with me on the first date.
Yeah.
And
that's the opposite of that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But I also believe, and here the Tates may disagree, and maybe people like Rich Cooper might disagree, I don't know. But I also believe that actually you don't actually have to be a multimillionaire to have that gravitas, or to, or to have big cars and things like this. I think that okay, look, in some circumstances, there's going to be a bit of a glass ceiling, right? If you are purporting to be this kind of very wealthy man and you're not, then you're going to get found out. And there are probably undoubtedly some women who, they're going to have a threshold of who they want to, have sex with or whatever. So I'm not denying that. But what I do believe is that if you embody the gravitas, if you embody the inner game, let's say, then in many cases that is going to, it's not that you shouldn't be working on the stuff in the background. It's not that those things aren't important, but the key thing really is the inner game, rather than the millions and the cars and all the rest of it. And
I can attest to that, because especially living in a city like Miami, there are a lot of complete fakers, dudes who are presenting themselves to be one thing, like the rented Lambo, the fake Instagram followers, the popping bottles that are in the club that aren't even there. Like, they're fronting this image, but they still, whenever they're talking to a woman, they're talking in a way that is convincing her that he does actually live that lifestyle and he is that guy. Like, he's buying his own bullshit. That's kind of like the fake it till you make it kind of argument. There's a lot of guys here in Miami who ain't made it, but they're absolutely faking it. And it's just because, and they're doing it, so they're faking it so much that they even believe their own bullshit. And that is what convinces the woman that this guy is actually a catch. You've disappeared into the night.
I know. Hang on a sec. I'm just going to bring up my.
But you can. I'm sure, like anybody who has, lived, remembers some dude from their high school, from their college years, who was a complete bum. So everybody has seen this guy who's a complete bum. Actually, maybe he's a pothead. Maybe he's some, in a band and it's going nowhere. He's got nothing actually going for him, but he has this delusional self-confidence, and that's what gets him laid consistently. And then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a positive feedback loop. He's delusionally self-confident, so the women give. He's delusionally self-confident, which gets a positive response from women, which gets him laid, which makes him more confident, and it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Well, I agree completely, and I've always been fascinated with this, because I think fundamentally I'm just fascinated with what is it really that creates social power, or what is it that creates this impression of value in somebody, because you sense it, don't you? And I think actually it's what we tend to call charisma when we're not necessarily in these circles, but more in the mainstream. We talk about charisma, don't we? And that's why the course is called Charisma and Dating Academy, because I did a deep dive into charisma and looking at the science of charisma, because there is a science, there are academics who study this stuff. And can it be taught? Yes, it can be taught. There are principles that you can learn, you can implement, and we go through those in the course. But you can feel it, can't you, when you walk into a room? I mean, I met a guy earlier I went to a tailor's in London because I was curious about this particular guy, because he's got a very interesting Instagram presence and all this kind of stuff. He does stuff for kind of some celebrities and things like that. And I went in there and I took a shirt in, and I thought, well, I'll get this shirt, sort of tailored, because I quite like it. It's, and I want to do something that's going to be relatively inexpensive, just so I can meet this guy, see what he's like, and see what his vibe is. And I walked in, and he was just one of these people who's just very, very charismatic immediately. And he nearly sold me a jacket. He was like, literally, you know, like I nearly walked out having given him a load of money for this bloody jacket that he's, oh yeah, mate, that's perfect on you. You know, like I wouldn't normally let this go and everything. And there are people that have this natural thing. And I'm sure if he was in company and there were other people around, he would kind of stand out as almost having this star quality. He's not really famous, but there are people who just embody that thing, aren't there? And it's that. If you can get that, that's going to take you not necessarily all the way, but it's going to really, really help you because most of the time we're being judged by women in social situations. They're looking at us and they're looking at how do you deal with other people? How do other people act around you? You know, what kind of aura are you putting out? And that, I think, is really the key to attraction, particularly in like social places like bars, clubs, lounges, stuff like that.
How important is in a game in terms of like it practically when you're on boot camps with guys, how important is in a game in terms of defeating approach anxiety for guys? And how much does approach anxiety in a game kind of like intertwine in your experience?
With approaches?
Yeah, approach anxiety in particular.
Well, I guess they're intimately connected because if you had perfect in a game, like if you genuinely thought I am that enormously high value dude, then theoretically you would have no approach anxiety because how could she reject you? In theory, you know, if you imagine how you put this on a graph or something, but if you imagine like, you know, maximum in a game or maximum inner strength plus, you know, it will be sort of zero approach anxiety, wouldn't it? And then the line would go the other way. I think in reality, though, I think most guys are going to have an element of approach anxiety. I'm sure even celebrities have, you know, in fact, probably depending on the circumstances and so on. I think celebrities definitely have a degree.
Celebrities hire have people on staff to go approach women for them.
Yeah,
like that's notorious. Like Drake has that. You know, he has like a full-time guy whose job it is to like approach women he finds beautiful and invite them back to his place. Like they outsource that shit.
yeah. But I think in general, if you have a very high opinion of yourself, like that dude that I don't know if you saw any of the videos we did with King Cole, the Indian guy. Yeah, so that guy we were working with in Russia, and he's got his own YouTube channel now. He's a really cool guy. He's just has some of the strongest inner game I've ever seen, and certainly James has ever seen as well. I mean, he's just like incredible self-belief and fortitude and everything. And I mean, his whole vibe is, he said when he goes into an approach, he genuinely believes that her getting the chance to meet him is a massive benefit to her.
Yes.
And even if she disagrees, that's fine. But he goes in with this belief. It's like, I've got something great to offer this woman. And, you know, not a lot of the time, you know, he gets rejected, of course, but he doesn't faze him because he still believes that. It's just she wasn't able to see it.
I think that's a great practical starting point for most guys, is like fundamentally going into any interaction believing that like that unwavering belief that her life is going to improve by being like, if she's in your life, her life is going to improve. If she, you know, becomes intimate with you, it's only uphill from there for her. It's the best possible choice she could be making. In a way, like another delusional belief is like, well, I am sent from heaven. I am here to like make your life so much better you don't even understand. Like that's the kind of self-talk I'm talking about with this sort of delusional, quote unquote delusion. But some of the times, but it's not actually delusional. I mean, I want to bring this up because it's the same point. Joe Mercer's way, he said, I'm just wondering if there's an internal game distinction between a delusional faker and someone who's earned it, but overwhelming self-confidence. I guess faking it is a start. Actually, no, you asked it up here a bit further. Sorry, this is the question you're asking. Yeah, is there a difference between delusional self-confidence and that overwhelming but earned self-confidence that you guys have? Well, the difference is that you've already stated it. You actually earned it. Like, I used to work with this guy back years ago when I used to the last job I ever actually had. I used to work like as an employee. I used to work in a pub back in Australia. It was the shittiest pub you could imagine, like full of like painters, bricklayers, electricians, like carpenters, like all tradies pub, right? And I had this one guy, James, who used to work behind the bar with me. This man was the epitome of delusional self-confidence. He wasn't actually that charismatic, but he definitely had delusional self-confidence because he used to go around he was trying to make manager. He was trying to get promoted. So he used to go around doing little odd jobs around the pub before his shift started. So he one day he tried to fix a light in the ceiling, nearly set the goddamn pub on fire, believed he could do it, didn't have a clue what he was doing, but he did it anyway. Another day, he decided to paint the men's bathroom, and in a pub full of paint, where painters literally come in and have a drink. And I remember that he painted the bathroom, didn't have a clue what he was doing, didn't have a clue didn't know the first thing about painting. And the moment he got done, one of the customers walked in who was a painter, had a piss, came back out again, and went to the manager and said, "Who the hell did you get to paint the bathroom, Stevie Wonder?" He did an absolute shit job, but he had this unwavering belief that he could do anything he put his mind to, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But the difference between that and being someone who garners respect and confidence from others, and is that they actually have the skills to back it up. There's actually something underneath, a foundation underneath that confidence of real world skill, real world experience, real world accomplishments. And so that is how you go from being kind of fake it till you make it delusionally self-confident to actually confident. And like I mentioned before, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes, where fake it till you make it confidence can actually get you real world results.
Yeah, and then sometimes you sort of catch up on the tail end, because if you believe you're incredibly good at something, and then even if you you get it wrong a few times, but you just bulldoze on anyway, you're probably going to get better at it in the meantime. You get more positive feedback, and then it loops around on itself. I mean, one issue with talking about the Tates is that it sort of then gives the impression that what we're really saying is, you kind of got to be a multimillionaire and all of that. And that's not what I'm saying. I mean, although, of course, they do have very tangible real world things that they can point to say, look, I am successful because of X, Y, and Z. But equally, somebody who is, I don't know. I mean, somebody who's a songwriter who's got no money, but he's written some amazing songs, or maybe he's he performs in his local town or something. He could point to that and just say, well, look, I have great value because look at this thing that I've done. You
need to be able to latch. You need to latch onto whatever you can about yourself.
Yeah.
To generate that self-worth, to generate their self-esteem. It's it doesn't matter what it is. The first thing is, don't compare yourself to other people, because you don't have the same life.
Yeah.
You didn't have the same upbringing. You didn't have the same parents. You didn't have the same opportunities. So you can't go around and be like, oh, I'm a piece of shit. I'm worthless because I don't have a Lambo. Well, motherfucker, stop. Rewind. Let's go a little bit simpler. It's better to compare yourself to yourself and be like, okay, well, why do I have value? Why do I have worth? And then you can just generate any reason you want. Just the act of going up and approaching a woman should be enough to generate self-esteem and confidence, because most men don't have the balls to even do that.
Yeah.
So if you're just a guy, it's as simple as, I'm a guy who has the balls to go and talk to women, that is a good starting point for building self-esteem and building confidence.
Exactly. And that's why I always tell guys that I work with, you should congratulate yourself, not on the success or the failure. Does she give you her phone number? Does she go on a date with you? Whatever. Don't judge it by that. Judge it on the fact that you did the action, you made the approach, because that's the bit you can control. And like you say, really, that puts you probably in the top 91% of guys, because who the hell else is doing it, really? I mean, there's a few people, on the internet, but really, I mean, most guys are just sitting at home with their dick in their hand, aren't they?
So, well, not this month. They're not, Troy. It's no fat November.
Exactly.
They're sitting around on the internet drawing green lines on people's photos.
Somebody's got to do it.
I tell you, he blocked. I found out he blocked me.
Oh, really?
And I've never even interacted with that guy, the Rivellino guy. And I said it must be, maybe my cock was leaning in a porno or something, and that's why he blocked me. I'm like, oh, whatever. In terms of your Cat Academy course on In a Game, I remember you mentioning that you take the approach of trying to build these guys back up from a foundation again. What's kind of without giving too much away, what's kind of your process in this course for helping guys build up that inner game?
Well, firstly, I would say that the real magic happens in the webinar. So I've got different tiers for this. Right. So you've got an entry-level tier where you just get the digital course. Then you've got tier 2 where you get the course and you also get to come into the live webinars that I'm going to be doing in November as well. And I would say that the real personality transformation work really takes place obviously within the live webinars, because that's when I'm able to do it, because that's a group coaching situation. And I'm able to, we'll have a small number of guys in the group. I'm able to sort of speak one-on-one to the guys, or, they can ask questions and we can really help them with their, the personality.
With their unique situation.
Yeah, exactly. But as I say, depending on your budget, there is also an option just to get the to get the digital course and work through the modules yourself. And I mean, there's 10 hours worth of content in this, so it's very deep. Now, how it breaks down, we've got several sections. So the first one is dating dynamics, the global dating scene, where I go through in detail exactly what's happening out there at the moment in terms of dating, and we really get a good understanding of the problem, if you like, or the challenge that people have out there on the battlefield. So that's the first thing. Then I go into the section on charisma, which I've called Your Unfair Advantage in Dating. And we go right through the whole thing. So what is charisma? How mindset is everything. And then I go through different techniques, many different techniques, practical things that you can actually do in order to destroy your fear of rejection, get rid of any anger issues you've got, crush anxiety and embarrassment for approaching, and then really just how to put it all together and take it to the next level. So we do a deep dive into charisma. Then the next section is the dark side, the bad boy. And this is looking at the whole dark triad thing. Why is the bad boy so attractive? Why is it dating rocket fuel? Really, it comes down to making yourself, as Rollo would say, your own mental point of origin. So how do you do that? Okay. And again, then we go into different techniques for how you can do this, but crucially do this without losing your soul, because this isn't about actually becoming, somebody who is deranged. This is about, okay, listen, because let's face it, I mean, most guys who come into this space are kind of like nice guys, right? I don't even mean that in a disparaging way. They just want the best for people, and they're just, and we just need to find a way to turn up the dial on the edge a little bit. Yep. So we go into that. And then after that, I talk about radical differentiation, which is making yourself stand out, because a lot of dudes these days, I mean, this as well. People are very samey. It's a little bit bland, a little bit samey. We all shop in the same shops. We all listen to the same sort of music. We're all kind of, and it's like, okay, so how are you standing out? How do you stand out from the crowd? I mean, again, the Tates, yes, they've got money and all the rest of it, but they also stand out in various ways. What they wear, how they look, how they comport themselves, the kind of places they go. All of these things are important, right? How do you stand out? How do you differentiate yourself from the competitors around you? And the thing with that is, and this is really about breaking yourself down and then building it up again. It's a bit like, okay, so firstly, who am I? When I drill down, who actually am I, or who do I want to be? And then what sort of archetype am I looking to inhabit? So, am I the crazy rock star guy, or am I the Wolf of Wall Street type character? Am I the sort of, just finding an archetype that works for you, and then how do I portray that to the world? And the way you can portray it to the world is, as I say, through the variety of things. How you dress, how you talk to people, what you talk about, the manner in which you use body language, and so on and so forth. So, but it's putting together something that's cohesive, that it actually makes sense for you. And then we go into attraction and dating techniques. And that's basically the quote unquote game section, where we go through sort of an A to Z of, all right, so now you've got all that stuff together. This is now how you go out and engage in the field. So it's pretty deep. There's a lot of detail in there.
It sounds pretty comprehensive. You've got like 10 hours of material in there to get through. It's not, it's not a skimming over of material.
It's like a PhD in, or at least a master's, in dating skills. But the thing is, right, I mean, I've thrown everything that I've learned over the last couple of decades into this, really, because I underwent a transformation where I was a classic zero to hero kind of thing. I was a complete nerd. very, very, no results in dating, 18, 19, until I was 20, nothing really. I mean, I had girls who kind of liked me at school and stuff, but, you know, I've always got into one-itis things with girls who didn't want me. And so there was nothing doing at all. And then I just sort of, partly because I started like partying and, you know, and I don't recommend this to people, but drinking a bit, you know, maybe doing some naughty substances and stuff like that. And also thinking very carefully about hierarchies and about socializing and thinking, well, actually, hang on a minute. What happens if I sod it? What if I just flip the script here for a minute? What if I just walk around as if I'm a big deal, even though I didn't really think that I was, and see how people reacted to me? And I assumed I was just going to get beaten up. In fact, what happened was people, and particularly women, started to respond to me differently because I was being sort of challenging all of a sudden and a little bit cocky funny, and there was a different energy. And having undergone that myself, I'm then able to teach it because I saw how the results that I was getting just changed. It wasn't that I become better looking. It wasn't that I become taller, more ripped, or any of that stuff, or more rich. It was just literally the way that I was portraying myself.
Yep. And I like that first experiment of what would happen if I talked like this kind of guy. What would happen if I carried myself as if I was this?
Yeah, because I had this idea when I was younger. I thought, for example, clothes. You know, I thought I never used to. I was always kind of quite light clothes, but I never dressed in a particularly trendy way because and this is going to sound stupid now, but this is literally where my mindset was. I thought, well, I can't wear that sort of thing because only cool people can wear that.
Right.
And I'm not a cool person.
Yeah.
So it's not for me. And of course that was a stupid thing to think. But then I realized, well, actually, hang on a sec. Who says? Like, I could just wear that damn thing anyway. And if people don't like it, well, sod them. Yeah. And it was that sort of mindset switch that really started to change things up for me.
I'm curious, you mentioned you break down like the kind of current dating marketplace, and you said you just spent a bit of time bouncing through a few different countries. I think you said Russia, Poland, Ukraine, and Serbia. Did I hear that right?
Serbia, yeah.
With your coaching, your boot camps, right?
Yeah.
What have you noticed between like comparing those countries with London? What do you notice?
Well,
I'm curious what your opinions are on this matter.
I mean, it's really interesting. It is like day and night, really. When you go from here, and I'm in London now. Literally, you can get on a plane. It's like 4 hours, and you're in Moscow. I forget, like Ukraine, it's a few hours. It's 3 hours, I think. Very, very, very close, really. But culturally, those places are so different, and the dating marketplaces there are so different, and even Warsaw to some extent, and Serbia as well. I mean, we could do a whole show about it, really. But the relations between the sexes seem to be a lot more pleasant in those places. So if you approach a woman who is really, really very stunningly attractive, you know, in general, I'm not saying that it's easy or anything like that, but you are going to get a better reception in those places than you are in London. And they genuinely seem to enjoy the fact that you've come over and you've made a compliment, you've said something to her. And even if she's not, doesn't want to date you or anything like that, but there'll be a nice interaction. It's very pleasant. And I feel like, unfortunately, in London and probably in the English-speaking countries, it's become a little bit toxic recently, you know, and it's a shame, I think, really.
They're flattered. They're genuinely flattered by the approach, is what I found during my time in Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's kind of crazy because when I was in Kiev, I mean, we're walking down Khreshchatyk, and I mean, there's a McDonald's on Khreshchatyk. We're not the most, auspicious of places, but they were the most beautiful girls, beautiful women, just like eating Big Macs in this Khreshchatyk. Girls who literally looked like they could have walked off of the cover of a magazine or something, you know, and probably would, because obviously a lot of models come from those places. You could go and talk to a woman like that, and they will be really sort of flattered and say, "Oh, that's so nice of you to say that." And I mean, not every time. I mean, of course, there are rejections and things like this, but there's just, in general, the baseline is much higher, and there's just this sense of pleasantness between the sexes.
Yeah, as opposed to combativeness.
Yeah, exactly. And in Russia as well, definitely in Russia, because particularly in Moscow, because the women generally speaking, are fairly, they're quite affluent there. They tend to, the girls we were dealing with, good jobs, well-educated, decent money, all that kind of stuff. It's a very polite sort of culture. They're quite polite and cultured. And they'll really sort of, there's just this pleasantness about the interactions that, and then in London, you're like, oh, hi, no, fuck off. Or they call the police or something,
You can't, what was it you posted in the group chat earlier today, that the poster in London where you can't stare at people anymore? That's a sexual assault or something.
Yeah, there's a poster on the. Somebody sent me this. I haven't actually seen it. Somebody sent me a picture of this poster where it says that staring is a form of harassment. Which, I mean, yeah, I mean it's. Don't
you dare look at a woman.
It's just problematic because, I mean, how do you prove that, right? And
I mean, that's all it is. It's just brainwashing and programming men to be weaker. Is all it really is.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it doesn't say on that poster. It doesn't talk about genders on that poster because obviously they couldn't, because that would also be politically incorrect. But I mean, clearly, they're aiming it at men and the male gaze.
Obviously, it's aimed at men. Yeah,
but theoretically, if a woman looks at you on the London Underground, you could call the police now, because it goes both ways, doesn't it? So,
well, if I catch her staring, she's going straight to prison.
Yeah. So, but this is a very culturally. I mean, unfortunately, we're in a position where it feels like male desire or male sexuality is becoming demonized in the culture. Unfairly, I would say. I mean, that's not to say there aren't bad apples. Of course there are. That's not to say that bad things don't happen. But just to blanket sort of demonize male sexuality seems the pendulum has swung too far.
Yeah.
But it's very culturally conditioned because, as I say, get on a plane, travel for 3 hours, and it's a very, very different story. But I don't believe the women in those places are horrendously oppressed or anything like this. I mean, as I said, certainly in Moscow, women, good jobs, earning good money, well-educated, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like there's... It's really hard. I think I need to spend more time there to really understand it. But it's just culturally different, even though there's a lot of, as I say, autonomy over there. I don't think it's some horrendously patriarchal thing like, back in the day. No, I agree. That was the impression that I got, at least from my brief stint in the Ukraine as well. It's like the traditional gender roles are kind of still held. Like the women want to be, like they aspire to be like a housewife and have kids and have a family, versus like going off on a career and being a boss bitch and like kind of stuff. I think that has quite a lot to do with it. If there's any, we're not going to go on for too much longer because Troy does has to jet off. If anyone's got any direct questions, please drop them in the chat right now, and we'll fill them. I remember seeing one up here for you at some point. Where was it? Oh, here we go. From Zomboy, he says, Troy, how many dates do you give a girl to sleep with you until you soft or hard next to her? One, and that's it.
I give like 2 max, if I'm being perfectly honest. After the second one, I'm like, no, I ain't got time for this. See ya. You're an idiot.
I haven't really got a hard or fast rule. I mean, I think it's a bit circumstantial. It depends where you are, because it depends what the girl's like. It depends. I mean, there was one girl. I mean, generally speaking, you're looking at 2 and at the very outside 3. But more normally, 2 I would say is more of an average.
Right.
And then 1 obviously increasingly happens, but you can't always guarantee that it's going to be 1. So maybe 2. And on the outside 3. There was one time though I was dating a girl in London that I'd met. Very, very beautiful Russian girl, actually, who I met just in a cafe or something like that. And we'd gone past the 3-date mark, but she was really beautiful. I thought she, significantly above my league, let's say.
Nonsense, Troy.
How could she have been? And then I did cut it off because I just thought, oh, you know what, I'm not, and I probably read too many angry articles by people on in the manosphere or whatever at that time, and I was just like, oh, sod this. But I kind of regretted it a bit afterwards, because then I thought, well, do you know what? I mean, if you like her enough, I mean, as long as you don't become a simp and you're just getting played for dinner and stuff like that, which I wasn't, then you've got to take it case by case, right? Haven't you?
Yeah. I mean,
you think is that too simpy? But you know what I'm saying? Like, there's going to be exceptions. Sometimes you might think, oh, do you know what? I'll see her again, whatever. I mean, as long as you're not carrying it on ridiculously long and you're just getting played for,
Yeah, it comes from like say for example, you take a girl on a dinner date. It's like when I take a girl out on a dinner date, it's typically because I want to go try a new restaurant out, and I'm inviting her along with me. Right?
Yeah.
Normally, I will just go to the exact same lounge bar for every date.
Oh yeah,
because the staff are starting to recognize me. They're like, "Oh, this guy again." I sit in the exact same couch like this motherfucker. But that's what I'm like trying to close. But if I just genuinely want to go like try the food at a new restaurant, okay, I'll invite a girl out there. Versus like I'm taking her on this dinner date to try and impress her. Like those are two different frames of reference, right? And and the other thing I'll say about the girls I met in the Ukraine was that I genuinely liked taking them out for like dinner and drinks. Like I like they were they were being so feminine and pleasant that I enjoyed their company. And enjoyed doing that for them. Versus in the West, and particularly in a place like Miami, there's no if buts or maybes. There are a lot of girls who will try to use dudes for foodie dates and stuff. And if you've got a degree of social calibration, you'll pick up on that. You'll be able to tell, is this girl like a gold digger? Is this girl like just trying to use me for food or whatever? Is there no genuine interest here? If you notice that, then I'd say cut it off.
Yeah, right? Of course.
But that wasn't the situation you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, with that particular girl, I never took her for dinner or anything like that. But yeah, you've got to, again, it's that sense of you've got to be awake to the signals that you're getting. I mean, is there a modicum of interest there? I mean, have you kissed her or whatever? Right? I mean, that's one thing. Is she happy to get physical with you, which this girl was? If those things are in place, but it's just for some reason, and she's not sort of subtly or unsubtly asking you for money or for dinners and things like that, then you might think, well, do you know what? I'll let this run for a little bit. It's got to be case by case, but in most cases, I would say 2, 3 is the kind of rule of thumb.
We've got another question here from Royal. Sterling, how do you feel about the instant compliment? Jay Waller seems against it. Is in terms of like an opener? I'm not really a big fan of like and Justin will say the same thing. Complimenting a girl directly on her beauty, off rip, especially here in the West. What he will like one of the like kind of a variant of that I have used and I know Justin has used is something if you can't think of anything to say in the moment is like, hey, I had to come say hi. Otherwise, I'd be kicking myself for the rest of the day if I hadn't come say hi. Which is kind of a compliment. It's really a compliment, but you're not actually directly complimenting her beauty, and it's kind of calling out the situation because it's kind of like, well, I don't have anything else. I couldn't think of anything else to say, but I'm just like, look, if I didn't come say hi to you, I'd be regretting it. So, hi, I'm Sterling. That's kind of a compliment, but it's kind of not a compliment in a way. It's definitely not a compliment direct on her beauty. What do you think about that?
I mean, I agree in general. I mean, we do sometimes open with compliments. You go up, say, hey, I just saw you. I thought you looked really nice. But the compliment is tempered, let's say. We're not going up and saying, oh, my God, I just saw you. I was like, wow. That kind of thing is a bad move. And then you'll often pull it back a little bit. So it's like, oh, you look, came up, thought you looked really cute. I had to come over and say hello. But now I'm a bit nearer. I noticed there's something kind of suspicious about you, actually. I'm not really sure what's, you sort of pull it back slightly. Yeah. You're certainly not going and fawning all over her because that's just obviously that's well, in London and these places, it's a bit of a recipe for disaster.
Will has a very interesting question. He says, meeting a mature woman looks like Janet Mason tonight. She is 42. I'm 25. Have to meet her husband before I bang her with just us two. Any advice? I am uniquely positioned to give fantastic advice on this. Win the guy over, win him over, and compliment. If this is what I think it is, it's like a swingers situation where like you are going to go off and play with the girl, and he's like there to approve you first. Win him over, and then compliment his wife's beauty to him. Like, tell him, man, how'd you get so lucky? She's fucking gorgeous. God damn. That's say that shit to him to boost his ego, make him feel like he's the man, even though you're about to go fuck his wife. That is the key to winning that situation over. That is my advice. Have you done anything like this before, Troy?
Well, a bit. I mean, a bit. I mean, I've been to a lot of like those.
You go to the clubs, though, right? The club, specifically the clubs, though.
Yeah, I've been to the clubs. I mean, I haven't really been into sort of like that specifically that situation of being like, oh, hi, Jeff. All right, now I'm going to bang Marion. You know, I've not quite done that, but I've been in sort of I've observed a lot of that kind of stuff happening. I mean, it sounds like what you're saying sounds right to me, to be honest.
I mean, I just know I've been in that exact situation a lot of times. I know exactly what to do. That was always my playbook. Samuel Moore has the question. How do you reconcile being able to get with women you don't care about versus having a hard time getting with women you do want? I am going to, because I used to have this problem and I don't anymore. And it was because of a lack of self-esteem. It honestly, God, it was a lack of like the way I was always like the girls that I was with were always punching up. Like they were like, I was out of their league, if I'm being honest, for most of the girls I used to date in my 20s. Now it's of course corrected. And it's because of like it was a self-esteem issue, if I was being perfectly honest. It was like the way I perceived myself. Just trying it on with a girl who you think is like your 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 and having her actually respond positively is like, you just need that to happen once and that will shatter that delusion in your mind.
Because and I think Rollo says this actually somewhere, that the idea of leagues is a bit of a myth in a way.
You self-sort into leagues.
Yes. What you should do is to go out there and start regularly approaching girls who you think are above that threshold, and letting the chips fall where they may. Because you no doubt there'll be some rejections, but you'd be surprised as well, actually, the number of those women that respond positively. And that was the key thing that changed it for me as well. Actually, was before I would. Well, I had trouble approaching anybody, but I certainly wouldn't approach somebody I thought was significantly above me. And then I just started doing it for the lols, basically. Just always see what happens, right? Surprisingly, actually, I would sometimes get a better reception from women that I would have considered above me, rather than the women that I thought were my level or even below. And it's still there's no real rhyme or reason to it, really. I mean, I've got rejected horrendously by women who I didn't consider to be amazingly attractive, and then suddenly I'm getting checked out by some girl who I think is like an 8 or a 9. I mean, it's just nuts. I was thinking of one girl in particular in Russia who I'm hopefully going to. I'm supposed to be meeting up with next week, and it's just like what, the correlation between the two things is not as fixed as you would think, particularly when you're going to different dating markets as well. That's the other thing, because as I say, I mean, the reception that I would get in Ukraine or I would get in Eastern Europe is different to the reception I would get in London, so that mixes things up as well.
Last question here from Zomboy before you check out. I've been reading your book on how to grow your PP. It's great. Is there a limit to how much a guy can grow his appendage, or can you grow it substantially as long as you put in the work? There's you're looking at probably an upper echelon of at least like 2 to 3 inches realistically. Otherwise, you're going to be doing this for like within like a 12 to 24 month time span. You're looking at 2 for most guys. Some guys can go a bit longer. But realistically, if you want to push it beyond that, you're probably going to be. It's like a diminishing returns. You know what I mean? For the amount of effort you're going to put in, you're going to see significantly diminishing returns. Most of your returns are going to come within the first 6 to 12 months. So it's going to tail off a lot after that. So you're going to have to put in twice as much time for like half as much results. If that makes sense.
Exactly.
So it kind of is going to be. There's going to be a point where you're not really going to be putting in the effort, I think.
Exactly. And how do I reduce mine a bit, because it's just getting a little bit. It's
just getting in the way. It's just. I love it.
Simon Thompson actually on the chat. Swingers clubs are friendlier than regular clubs, which is true. So I think Simon is a bit of an aficionado of some of these places.
Yes, I think Simon and I have chatted before. Via email. Yes, that's the same anywhere in the world. Like it's just the nature of the scene. You know, you want people. There's no reason to be standoffish and rejecting because everyone wants to fuck everyone else. So it's like, okay, cool. We're all here to have a good time.
Yeah,
you know? And Sam has said, as a high-class male companion, how did you find MILFs, and how do you recommend the average guy find wealthy MILFs? Well, they found me through my adverts. That's how they found me. How does the average guy find wealthy MILFs? I know at least there was this one bar back in Los Angeles that was notorious. I think it was in Orange County. It was notorious on a Friday night for being like cougar night, where it would be basically all the wealthy cougars would go hang out, and the younger dudes would come in, and that's how they'd get their sugar mamas. I'm sure in most major metropolitan cities, there's going to be some kind of an equivalent hangout if there's a big enough population.
Yeah,
if it's a wealthy enough population.
In Manchester, there used to be this thing called Grab a Granny Night at the Ritz. Slightly more prosaic, you know.
There you go. That's how you do it.
Hey, it's Grab a Granny Night. That was kind of house, actually.
For those of you guys who want to go check out Troy's inner game course, his Cat Academy course, the link is in the description below. It's also in the chat here. They've got 48 as of right now. They have 48 hours. Is that correct? It ends less than 48 hours because it ends
less than 48 hours.
Ends tomorrow night.
It ends midnight EST, which is about 5 a.m. in the UK.
Midnight EST on
Sunday night, Monday morning,
November 14th.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So get in there now. Click on this link and get in there now before it closes, because Troy's very graciously extended the enrollment period just for me, just for my audience, so you can check it out.
Exactly. We're going to close on, as I say, Sunday at midnight EST. In the UK, that's about 5 a.m. I think it's 6 a.m. Monday morning in Europe. So, you know, there's a bit of time left now, but not an enormous amount of time. There are 3 tiers to this as well. The first tier is only £197. So if your budget is smaller and you just want to get the digital course, you can absolutely do that. And it's really ridiculously like a steal at that price, to be honest. And what I would recommend, though, is that you go to tier 2 and then you come into the Zoom webinars as well, because that's really where the magic happens in terms of the actual teaching. And we're going to have a really cool group of guys. That's $497. And then there's tier 3, which is limited. There's only 10 spaces available for this, and they're nearly gone already. We've only actually got a couple left now, where you get the digital course plus the Zoom webinars, and you also get 2 months worth of WhatsApp training with me as well, and that's £1,091. So you've got different sort of entry levels there, depending on the level that you want to go in at.
Excellent. And I can't ignore this one, Danny. Thank you once again. It's good to see you again, my friend. Glad to see you live. Been waiting for the live to come back. Here's a little something from the cookie jar. Thank you. There's going to be a couple of lives this week. I've got John Fitch on tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, and then on Tuesday I have Paul Benjamin on at 8 p.m. Eastern. So there's a few more lives coming in this week just to catch up with you guys since I've been banned, since YouTube doesn't like me. That'll do us for today. Anything else you want to let the guys know before we bounce out, Troy?
No, I think that's it. Cat Academy open now. Sign up, because it will close tomorrow night, and then that's it. So jump on board. Now you've got this opportunity, and use Stirling's link.
Yes, link in the description, link in the chat right there. All right, you guys have a fantastic Saturday, and we'll see you next time.